Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield, on the shores of Lake Springfield at the Villa Maria Retreat and Conference Center. If you travel East Lake Drive, you may well have seen this beautiful building many times and wondered, what's the history of that place? What goes on there? Well, I was interested too, and we came here to take a look at this place, to learn about the different incarnations of it and what it's been used for, and to see what it's doing now and what's going on in this conference center now. You know, Mary Ann Smith, you sparked my interest in this because I've only lived in Springfield for 22 years, and I had no idea that this wasn't always a retreat and conference center. They had many lives before that.
Exactly. A lot of people aren't familiar with that, and the great history of it is, it was the seminary. It was the seminary of the diocese for a while until 1986. Prior to that, this ground has always had something going on. In the 1930s, it was the beginning of Camp Star of the Sea, and CYO was out here all the time.
Yeah,
in the summers.
And a lot of Springfieldians, the older ones, would remember Camp Star of the Sea.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, we're going to visit with some who went to camp here in the summertime.
And they love it. We had a reunion last summer, and they just loved it, Now,
even before the seminary, it was even something before that. It was called the Latin School. It was built not to really to be a seminary as such, but to train men who were going into the seminary how to speak and read Latin.
That was Bishop O'Connor's dream. He felt that that would help the young men with their calling to the priesthood if they could learn Latin in a very brief, aggressive format, and that's how the Latin School idea developed. And they came and studied for a year, and they studied very hard.
Yeah.
And then it developed into more, with more training in that they were able to get an associate's degree. They did etiquette training here, as well as the Latin and the Greek that still went on. And it was the Latin School until 1961, and then they changed the name to the Diocesan Seminary of the Immaculate Conception.
Well, you know, we're going to talk to some of the priests who went to school here. So I mentioned some of the campers who went to camp here in the summertime. But first, would you show us through, because it's a gorgeous building.
I would be more than happy to.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Mary Ann, the first thing you see when you walk into the entrance hall is this gorgeous view down the central aisle, of which things open up off of. And that view of the lake out of the window is just spectacular.
It is. It's breathtaking, and that's the first thing I noticed when I first came in also. In fact, I moved my office to the front because of that view. I want everyone that come in the door to be able to see that.
It's beautiful. And we mentioned that the rooms open off of the main hall, and you can hear already the sound has changed, because in the chapel the acoustics pick up immediately, don't they?
Exactly. This is the original chapel. This is how it was. The only difference through the years is the pews are now stationary. In the past, they had chairs and they could move them around however they wanted, but that's been changed, and we have stationary pews now.
1956, this building was built, so this chapel has remained virtually unchanged except for the pews since 1956. And this is, you know, when you think about the resources that went into a chapel for a Latin school,
exactly,
it's really remarkable.
The Stations of the Cross on the wall are the original. They were made for here.
Yeah. This is really good for your retreat folks, because they gives them a chance to meditate, to pray, for their spiritual needs.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, and then, of course, we're going to see much more of this as the program unfolds with some of the priests who went to school here.
Yes.
That's a classroom that we're going to visit later on. Most of the priests, remember, that wasn't their favorite favorite room.
Exactly. They did a lot of hard work there.
Yeah. And then when you get down to this room that we just saw the spectacular view from, this is, I guess you call it now, the living room or the meeting room, the socializing room. But originally, this was the library for the seminarians.
Yes. The library was here, and that's where Father John worked and did most of his cataloging of all the books.
And we'll talk to Father John later in this program. It's an interesting story. But this is gorgeous. I mean, for your meetings and conferences here, the woodwork and just the size of the scale is gorgeous, isn't it?
And everyone loves to sit in here. It's a very calm and peaceful room and very social. All of the groups that come here, they like to end up in here. It's very nice, and they love the social benefits of the room.
Beautiful. Let's just take a peek in here, because back in the day when this was a seminary,
Yes.
of course, you needed a place to feed all those growing bodies.
Exactly.
And of course, this is kind of nice because it's still used as the dining area, but it also has the mirror, the same fireplace and the same beautiful woodwork that it has on this other side.
Exactly, and when we have groups here, we do the food and they eat in here just as in the past.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a beautiful place.
It is.
Now, the next thing is, I want to go down to where the students, the seminarians, would stay, because now this is where your retreat folks stay.
Yes, we
in
have.
the same wing where the seminarians used to stay.
We have the overnight accommodations, and that's exactly, and in some of the rooms there's still the original desk that they used and dressers, so we have a few original pieces that the seminarians used.
Okay, let's take a look.
Okay.
Well, Mary Ann, changing from a seminary to a retreat center actually is a pretty graceful change, isn't it? There's a lot of things in common that you have to have.
Exactly, yes. Because as a retreat center, you still need everything that the seminarians need. When, you know, you have to have a place for them to stay, you have to have a way to feed them, and you have to have the chapel for their spiritual needs,
Sure.
and of course the conference room for their learning.
When this was built in 1956, it was built for 21 young men, right?
Yes.
So 21 rooms.
Yes.
And interestingly, everybody had their own bathroom.
Yes.
Usually dorm. You know, they would have a dorm room and a big bathroom for everybody, or for half of them.
That's what set it apart.
Yeah, and it worked out so well for you, because people now expect their own bathroom, especially if they're going off on a conference or a retreat, don't they?
Yes, and a lot of people, that's the first thing they ask when they call.
Yeah.
Do we have our own restrooms, or do we have to share them in the hall? And I can always say, yes, we have them all.
Let's take a look down the wing here.
Okay.
This was one of the two wings where the seminarians would stay. This is a typical room right in there, and this hasn't changed. That has the original furniture from the time when you had the seminarians there in 1956.
Yes.
But it works out really well for what you need it for.
It's simplistic, and yet it takes care of all the needs of everyone that's here.
In 1956, when the bishop wanted to open a Latin school, I'm sure that there were some people that probably thought, no, that's kind of harebrained, a Latin school, you know, because the seminary was in New Berlin, am I right?
Yes, it was called Hilltop, and it was at a farmhouse, and they taught Latin there. Father Toulouse taught Latin, and they learned there, but it was the bishop's dream to have this, and that's how it all developed and evolved through the years.
And what bishop was that?
Bishop O'Connor.
Bishop O'Connor.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to see during this program, and what we're seeing unfold here, is in the 30s, when Lake Springfield was built, there was a certain amount of shoreline, and one of the priests in the diocese had access to the shoreline, didn't he? What was his name?
I believe it was Father Moisen. I'm not sure
Moisen.
if that's the correct pronunciation, but he purchased this land in the 30s, is my understanding.
Okay, and the first thing to come in there was the Camp Star of the Sea.
Yes, it was his dream to bring the kids here for summer camps, CYO and Camp Star of the Sea.
And then on adjoining property, Bishop O'Connor says, we need a Latin school. So this building is built.
Yes.
And then becomes the seminary.
Yes.
Which becomes the Villa Maria.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, we've got a full lineup of people who have different experiences with this building, and it'll be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Father John Ossola, way back in 1956, before they even called this a seminary, they called it the Latin School.
Diocesan Latin School.
And you were you were in the first class.
That's right.
To enter this establishment.
Right.
So what happened at the Latin School? What was the curriculum?
The main course, of course, was Latin, and we had Latin 2 hours a day, 6 days a week.
6 days.
Sunday was the only day we didn't have class. We also learned Greek. We had about 3 days a week we learned Greek, and there were other classes, English and religion and things like that. Yeah.
The curriculum changed over the years, because when it became known as a seminary, then it became a 2-year system. But you were it was just a 1-year deal, right? 1 year and you're out. What did you do after that? Where did you go to school?
I went up to Mundelein, up by Chicago. It's a more traditional seminary. And in those days, it was very strict. We went in September and never got out until May. I'm sorry, we got off 2 weeks in January. but we had no TV or radios or newspapers or soda or Time magazines, none of that. The idea was just to form you as a community and not have any distractions from the outside world. And many of the classes were taught in Latin. So the books were Latin, the teacher spoke in Latin.
So if you didn't learn your Latin here, you'd have been in trouble.
That's right.
You'd have gone in there not knowing what was going on.
There were two choices when you left here in those days. Either go to Mundelein in Chicago, where there was a lot of Latin used, or to St. John's in Little Rock, Arkansas. And they didn't use that much Latin there. So you kind of got...
That would have been your only other option if you hadn't learned your Latin. This is the classroom that you and your 12 students along with you. Has it changed much?
Not at all. Not at all. Well, there used to be a blackboard up there, but that's not there anymore.
Yeah, now there's a whiteboard behind you. The blackboard used to be there. That used to be the front of the room, I guess.
That's
and
right.
the teacher would stand up there.
Yes.
And were your teachers pretty strict?
Not particularly. Again, it was a kind of a moving you from high school into the other. So strict, yes. There was a tight schedule, but we got to go into town every week and all that kind of thing, you know. So we also did most of the caretaking of the building, the cleaning and all that kind of thing. See, when this was opened by Bishop O'Connor, it was something kind of new then, that he was welcoming and looking for guys that were in college or out of college. Back in the old days, back before that, you usually went to seminary in high school. It was kind of rare to come in after high school. So that was a new trend, getting guys after high school and even after college. So it was a new thing in the church. He was ahead of his time.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Noreen Davlin, way back in 1935, when you were part of the first group of kids to come out to this camp.
Right.
You were Noreen O'Brien.
Correct.
Back then, right?
Correct.
And you were the first group, so you didn't have anybody to tell you what Camp Star of the Sea was like. You just had to find out on your own.
Right.
Yeah, you were the first bunch. What was that like?
Well, we thought it was very fun. We'd never been to camp before, and my sister, that was 5 years older than I, came at the same week, and so everything was so new. Probably the first time I'd been away from home.
I'll bet.
And so we were excited that we went to Mass every morning and got to wear shorts, which we thought was risque because we'd always worn dresses past our knees.
Got to wear shorts.
And we didn't have to wear the chapel veil all the time. Seemed like we did sometime.
Yeah, probably just at church, and then you got to take it off.
No, well, that's the only time we ever wore one was at church. But some mornings we didn't have to wear them.
I see. Oh, okay. All right. You're excused for some reason on some mornings.
I don't know why.
Now, there were also a bunch of cabins here. They're not here anymore.
Right.
But you would have been like crowded in with like 10 other kids probably in a cabin. What was that like?
Oh, it was fun because we were all girls the same age, and we did have one counselor in there with us, but she was very giving. But, you know, we stayed up late, talked later than we should have.
Oh, sure.
And, no, that was fun to have 8 or 10 of us in one cabin.
You got to wear shorts and you got to stay up late, so you really got, it was very risque.
And we just had a cot with like an orange crate thing next to us to put all our belongings in.
Okay. Now, right behind us, of course, is Lake Springfield. The lake was pretty new at that time.
It was.
And one of your entertainments was being able to go swimming.
Every afternoon.
There was no air conditioning. There was no swimming pool.
Right.
So that was how you cooled off. What was it like swimming in Lake Springfield at the time?
Very muddy at the bottom. It was fun, though, just to get in the water.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd walk out on the pier and jump in. It was fun.
Sure.
Because we didn't get to swim that much. People didn't have pools then.
Yeah, and you lived in the city, right?
Right.
Yeah, so heck. It was a good escape.
Yeah.
Thank you, Noreen.
Well, you're entirely welcome. Just fun being here.
Well, Father John Nolan, we get a look at what you did for part of your duties at the seminary back in 1970. You were the librarian.
I was the librarian.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Stroke of luck, probably nothing more than a stroke of luck.
You wanted to be a librarian.
Yes.
Or they made you believe you wanted to be a librarian.
Yes. They offered us different positions, different jobs, and I volunteered to be the librarian, and here was my workplace.
Keeping track of all the books.
All the books.
When I came in here, I noticed you that had found the old card catalog that you were looking for.
I did. I did. It's still here.
Where is it? Let's take a look.
Found it.
I'll be darned. Yep, that's what I remember when I was in high school. That's what the card catalog looked like, sure enough. And I'll bet this brought back some memories, didn't it?
It
Looking through this
certainly
stuff.
did. It certainly did. There's a lot of typed cards in here, and I spent many hours
Oh, I'll bet you did.
at a manual typewriter.
Yeah, sure. In 1970, that's all there was. Not even electric, a manual typewriter.
Manual typewriter.
Typing out those cards. Now, you also had other duties.
Yes, yes. Additionally, each of us were asked to assist the other students by as servers, waiters, at the evening meal. So each evening for a week we would be assigned as a waiter, and we would wear the white apron, the white coat.
No kidding.
And we would wait the tables, bringing the meal in, removing the plates, and eventually then we would eat after the other
Is that
students
right?
had completed their meal.
Did any of the seminarians ever like sneak anything onto the plates? I mean, were you guys
Absolutely
mischievous?
not.
You weren't mischievous.
No,
huh?
not then. Not then.
Yeah. When you come back in this building, I'll bet you get a flood of memories, don't you?
Flood of memories. Certainly being presented with the library is certainly a memory, but very good memories, very positive time that was spent here with the other students.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Father.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Karen Hasera, long before that seminary was built, this little point of land on Lake Springfield was a camp for kids, and you were among thousands of kids over the years that would come out here to Camp Star of the Sea and spend a month in the summertime. How was that?
Oh, it was the most fantastic experience a kid could ever have. It was just so much fun. You could come for a week or 2 weeks, but I came for the full 4 weeks
You stayed
every
for the
summer.
whole month, huh?
For quite a few years, and then ended up coming back as a counselor
Is that
when I
right?
was old enough to be a counselor.
Oh, you must have
so
really loved it. You must have felt like you really belonged out
I
here.
did belong here.
Yeah.
I really did.
To want to come back out. I want to just kind of look at the property here over your right shoulder. We can look now. There's a couple of permanent buildings here that were still here from when it was a camp. The little house in the front is the director's house, and behind it is now a banquet hall, and that was where the meals were prepared.
That's right.
And then if we continue to go counterclockwise there, we'll see that the gymnasium. I bet you played a lot of basketball and other games in that gymnasium there, didn't you?
Lots of games. We did crafts there. When it rained, we spent a little too much time in there. We had movies.
You get
in
your
there.
picture taken in front of that building after
Of
every
course.
session,
yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
And if we look over to the left over there, now it's all woods now, but that used to be a trail that would go in there, and there were a bunch of cabins back there, little
Right.
wooden cabins. Huh?
There were 12 cabins, 4 units with 3 cabins in a unit, and the units were very, very competitive. We were always vying against each other.
Is that
for
right? So you
different
probably had a
things.
name. Your cabin
Of
probably
course,
had a name.
I was Hobo Haven. There was Devil's Den, Ghost Town,
Oh, wow.
and I don't remember the
Yeah.
4th, but every year I was in Hobo Haven, and it was just great fun.
You probably had, every year you probably had some of the same kids back to Hobo Haven too.
We did, and a lot of my classmates I went to Blessed Sacrament School in Springfield. We came, but there were, of course, most of the kids were from Springfield, but they were really from all over. And one of my best friends growing up was from Chicago. She was even in my wedding when I got married.
Oh, be darned.
And we were lifelong friends that we met here. So it's just a very special place.
Well, thank you for revisiting it.
You're
with us.
welcome. I really enjoy talking about it. So, thank you.
Monsignor Carl Kimmie, I'll bet when you come back to Villa Maria, I'll bet you're flooded with memories, because as an 18-year-old, you came here right out of high school and started your seminary work. And you and about a dozen other young men, this was home.
Yeah.
At a very formative time in your life.
Absolutely, Mark. I every time I come out here, it is like coming home. Spending 2 years here was a great privilege and a great pleasure for me to begin my seminary training here in the diocese and in the heart of the diocese. at what was then called the Diocesan Seminary of the Immaculate Conception. So whenever I have Mass here, or I come back to these halls, especially back here where our rooms were, I just am taken by the memories that come back even now, 30-some years ago, since I came here and lived here.
It hasn't changed that much, has it?
Not very much at all. We've done some renovations in more recent years for its current needs, but basically it's all very much the same, and happily so. It's always wonderful to see it kind of as it was when I was here.
What was it like day to day being in the seminary here?
Well, you know, it was a very regimented schedule. You know, by the plan of the church, you know, our life was very planned. We began every day with Mass and morning prayer, and of course we had all our meals here, and we had work to do here in the house, cleaning the house and taking care of our own rooms and the common areas. We all had assigned duties that changed every week. And then the bulk of our time was spent going to school. We took classes here, our Latin and our philosophy, and our theology courses. Priests would come in. We had our own two priests who lived here with us at the time. Father Olszewski was the rector, and Father Dominoff was our philosophy professor. But other priests would come in for days of recollection and for theology classes, and but then we would also go into the Springfield College in Illinois for our regular classes, English and mathematics and so forth.
I bet that was kind of strange, wasn't it? Because you weren't allowed to leave here unless you were going home for some reason to your family or going to the SCI.
That's correct. Yeah, we were seen at SCI as somewhat the unusual bunch that always come to class and then come home, you know. But
Who are those guys?
Yeah, but they really came to respect us and welcome us. All of our fellow students in our classes knew that we were seminarians and studying for the priesthood. But it was wonderful actually to have that interaction with them. But you're right, we weren't allowed to leave the property without permission. We had certain times where we were free to leave. Not very many of us had cars, but there were vehicles here that we could sign out and use. But we couldn't go home on the weekends, but we did go home during the summer.
Yeah.
And for vacations, Christmas and Easter and other times.
Yeah.
So.
You know, it must have been a lot of work, because you told me earlier you didn't have caretakers. I mean, you guys took care of the property, which meant mowing and cutting down limbs and all that kind of stuff. And you had to keep this place clean.
Right. We had all the duties here in the house. The only thing we were fortunate enough we had a cook. My first year here, a wonderful Franciscan sister that many of our priests have great fondness for, Sister Elvira, who has since died. And then in our second year, two other sisters came to take her place, Sister Constance and Sister Elaine. So they took care of the kitchen and the food preparation, and they were just delightful. We were very well cared for in that regard.
What did you guys do for fun?
Well, you know, you can imagine, you know, 12 guys or 15 guys, and you know, all of college age, you know, in that time, we found enough to fun. But we had a gym down on the property that we would play badminton and basketball, and there was the lake, and we had a small boat. At that time, it was sort of safe to swim in the lake. I don't know if it would be now, but some of us in the warmer months would swim. But we got into, you know, our own personal fun back here in the area here where we lived. All very, very, very good, clean fun, you know. But
just a water fight here and there.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one night you know, it'll live on in my memory. The kind of that happened spontaneously, a water fight back here in the hallway, and our rector, Father Olszewski, was out of the building that evening, and he came back a little bit before we anticipated him coming back, and actually caught us. But we got it all cleaned up before it was all said.
It was a wise decision not to carpet this place.
Yeah, it surely was.
One other question.
Sure.
Between us on the wall here is St. Jerome.
Yeah.
And this brings back memories to you, because he's a very unusual looking fellow.
Yeah, this is St. Jerome. Well, I don't know when this will air, but today is actually the memorial of St. Jerome, and he was a priest and a doctor of the church, and scripture scholar. And this picture hung, I'm not exactly sure where it hung. It wasn't necessarily here, but I think it was out in the hall somewhere. But he's a bit of a foreboding looking man. And you know, we kind of always poked fun of how he looked. But of course we had and we do have great respect for his scholarly work in the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But he intimidated you as a young man.
Yeah. He was always watching us.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks, Monsignor.
You're welcome.
You can relive some of this interesting history by visiting Villa Maria during their open house in December. With another Illinois story in Springfield on the banks of Lake Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
For a DVD copy of this episode of Illinois Stories, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, broadcast date, and topic. You may also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605 or by using our secure server by going online to networkknowledge.tv.